We're joined now by Craig Gilbert, our Washington bureau chief, who was covering the debate last night in Cleveland. So first, good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
All right. Last night, the format, we talked in our preview show about how it's just a different dynamic with 10 candidates on the stage. They sort of had these inconsistent questions to each and really pointed in many ways. What was your take on the format and how it affected the outcome?
Well, I mean, with 10 candidates on the stage, there were sort of one of two ways this could have gone. One was for it to make for a very stilted debate where there was no flow, and the other was what we got last night, which was more like a kind of a free-for-all and a carnival and a very entertaining and colorful debate. It did, when you have 10 candidates, it really mattered who got what questions, and the panelists played a huge role in this. Introduces some kind of inequities in the debate because the candidates have no control over which questions they get. But, they have to step up to the plate. And I think in some cases, some candidates kind of receded into the background, either because they wouldn't get questions for long periods of time. In the case of Governor Walker, I think in some cases his answers were so abbreviated that he didn't have as much airtime, particularly early in the debate, as he might have liked. And he had to field some tough questions, which I think he did reasonably well, but they weren't always subjects that he wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, what's one thing that struck me is when you're in a more conventional format, you half the time at least you know the question that's coming because it's been asked of your opponent, and here it was a little more think on your feet. I mean, for Walker overall, how would you grade his performance?
I think he did okay. I think it was sort of as advertised. I think he played it pretty safe. I think he signaled pretty clearly that he wasn't going to get into the trenches with the other Republican candidates, and he didn't. It was important to him to kind of keep to that kind of genial demeanor that we see from him on the campaign trail. He's trying to project a certain tone. The downside of that was that he didn't have a high-profile debate. He had some good moments, but he was not a huge presence on that debate stage. He didn't necessarily need to be because he's in better shape in this race than a lot of other people who were on that stage who really needed to force themselves into the action. A few of them did that. So I would say at a minimum, he did himself no harm. It was a debate that was kind of consistent with the way he's run his campaign. Maybe a little bit of a lost opportunity in the sense that he probably could have gotten a little bit more out of the debate than he did.
What was the assessment of his campaign team afterwards, and were they pleased with how it went, or
they called the spin room for a reason, and they told us and they told me that they thought it was a good debate, that they thought he did what he needed to do. What they were saying after the debate was consistent with what they were saying before the debate, which is the kind of debate he wanted to have, his strategy going in. He wasn't going to worry about what everybody else on the stage was doing. He was going to try to project a message. I think it did take him a while to kind of get to the core of his message, the whole message about fighting and winning all these battles in Wisconsin, which is sort of the uniqueness of his appeal to Republican primary voters. We didn't really hear that until his closing remarks, which is the one part of the debate where you do have some control, absolute control, over what you're going to say.
All right, now looking forward, the governor, of course, is an experienced politician. He'll adapt and adjust to these formats as he gets more comfortable with them. But what do you think he will be looking to do or needs to adapt to, for the next go-round in about a month?
Well, I think the big thing is just to get the most out of his answers. I looked up at the 30-minute mark, and he'd had basically 40 seconds of talking time. And he ended up with less time than all but one of the other Republicans on stage. It's not a huge deal, but again, I think you want to get the most out of these opportunities, and he was so kind of economical in some of his answers that he left time on the table, and I think you even saw him get better as the debate went on in getting the most out of his time.
All right, and lastly, best moment and worst moment in your mind for the governor last night?
I don't know if there's a worse moment. I do think, again, the criticism is that in some cases his answers were abbreviated and they didn't register. I think his best moment was the one-liner about, the Russian and Chinese hacking and how at this point the Russian and Chinese governments probably know more about Hillary Clinton's email server than members of Congress do. That got a big laugh out of the audience. It was obviously a prepared line, but I think it was kind of a high moment for him among Republican primary voters.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. And to our viewers, check out jsonline.com for Craig's analysis of the debate last night, and also watch for his coverage today of Governor Walker as a campaign stop in Ohio. Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.